For years, classic car fans have watched Peter Klutt build a reputation around rare machines, serious restorations, and a life spent chasing automotive history. Dennis Collins became famous for a very different kind of adventure, searching for forgotten cars and turning unlikely finds into valuable treasures. But what happens when two worlds like these meet? Is there a story between them that fans have never fully heard? And if Peter Klutt really has something to say about Dennis Collins, the answer may be more complicated than anyone expected. Before Peter Klutt became a familiar name to classic car fans, there was a much simpler story. It started with a love for old cars and a growing belief that these machines were more than just metal, engines, and paint. To Klutt, the best classic cars carried stories. Some had racing history. Some had famous owners. Others had simply survived long enough to become pieces of history. That idea would eventually help shape his career. Peter Klutt became closely connected with the world of collector cars through legendary Motorcar, the Canadian dealership known for handling rare and valuable automobiles. Over the years, the business became associated with some of the most desirable cars in the collector market. But behind a polished showroom and expensive machines was a much harder reality. Finding a great car is one thing. Knowing what to do with it is another. A rare vehicle can look perfect in photographs and still hide years of problems. A restoration can take enormous amounts of time and money. And when the car is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, even a small mistake can become a very expensive lesson. This is one reason Klutt's career became so interesting to collectors. His world was built around judgment. Which cars were worth saving? Which ones had real history? Which ones were truly rare? And which ones were simply expensive? Those questions became even more important as the classic car market grew. And this is where the story begins to connect with another name. Dennis Collins built his own reputation in the collector car world, but his path looked very different. While Klutt became strongly associated with the professional collector car business and high-end automobiles, Collins became known for the excitement of the hunt. His stories often centered around finding unusual vehicles, uncovering forgotten treasures, and bringing old machines back into the spotlight. On the surface, they seemed to represent two different sides of the same industry. One was focused on the world of rare collector cars and professional restoration. The other became known for the thrill of discovery. But both understood one powerful truth. A car's value is not always found under the hood. Sometimes the real value is hidden in its story. And once Dennis Collins entered the picture, fans began asking a much bigger question. How closely were these two worlds really connected? Here is where the story takes an interesting turn. Dennis Collins did not become known simply because he owned expensive cars. His appeal came from something much more exciting, the search itself. For fans watching from the outside, every forgotten garage, dusty barn, or old storage space seemed to hold the possibility of something special. And sometimes it did. Collins became widely recognized for his work in the automotive world, and later gained a much larger audience through television and online content. His name became strongly connected with rare Jeeps, classic American cars, and unusual automotive finds. His business, Collins Brothers Jeep, also helped establish his reputation in the Jeep community. But the most interesting part of Dennis Collins' story is not just what he found. It is why people cared. A classic car can be worth a lot of money, but an abandoned classic can create something even more powerful: curiosity. People want to know who owned it. Why was it forgotten? Why did it sit untouched for years? And what would happen if someone finally brought it back to life? That kind of story became part of Collins' public image. His approach also reflected a changing world. The classic car business was no longer limited to private collectors and specialist magazines. Television, online videos, auctions, and social media opened the doors to millions of people who had never considered themselves car enthusiasts. Suddenly, viewers could follow the entire journey. A car could be discovered in terrible condition, examined by experts, restored, sold, or placed into another collection. Every step created another chapter. This was a different kind of storytelling from the traditional collector car world. And yet, there was an important similarity between Collins and Peter Klutt. Both understood that the right car could become more than a possession. It could become an investment, a piece of history, a business opportunity, or even a story that people remember for years. That is why the names Peter Klutt and Dennis Collins naturally attract attention when they appear in the same conversation. They operated in overlapping automotive circles, but their public identities were built in different ways. Still, there is a crucial detail that must be understood. There is a difference between being part of the same industry and having a deep personal relationship. Fans can sometimes connect two famous names and assume there must be a hidden story behind them. But unless the people involved have publicly confirmed that story, it is impossible to know exactly what happened behind the scenes. And that distinction becomes extremely important here, because the more people looked at the worlds of Peter Klutt and Dennis Collins, the more questions appeared. Was there a real connection between them? Was it professional? Was it personal? Or were fans simply linking two well-known figures because they shared the same passion for rare cars? The answer takes us deeper into the world where reputation can be just as valuable as the cars themselves. And that is where the story begins to get much more complicated. At first glance, Peter Klutt and Dennis Collins might seem like two men following the same dream, but look closer and the difference becomes clear. Peter Klutt's public career has been closely tied to the world of professional collector cars. Through legendary Motorcar, his name became associated with rare vehicles, restorations, auctions, and serious collectors. His work placed him inside a world where history and authenticity could make an enormous difference in a car's value. Dennis Collins, meanwhile, built a reputation around the excitement of finding and working with unusual vehicles. His story became especially connected with Jeeps and other classic American automobiles. His public image was shaped not only by the cars themselves, but also by the process of finding them. That difference may sound small. It isn't. Imagine two people looking at the same old car, sitting in a dusty garage. One person may immediately ask, who owned this? Is the paperwork complete? What is the history? What condition is it really in? The other may be thinking, how did this car survive here? What can we do with it? Is there something special hiding underneath all this dirt? Both questions matter, and that is why their careers are interesting to compare. The classic car world is built on many different kinds of expertise. Some people know how to restore engines. Others understand bodywork. Some specialize in buying and selling. Others are experts at discovering cars that have been forgotten for decades. No single person needs to do everything. But the people who succeed often understand how all these pieces fit together. This is also where reputation becomes important. When you deal with rare cars, trust matters. Buyers want to know that the vehicle's history is accurate. Sellers want confidence that they are dealing with someone who understands a market. And collectors want to believe that the person standing in front of them knows the difference between a truly special automobile and one that simply looks impressive. Peter Klutt spent decades building credibility in that environment. Dennis Collins built his own reputation in another part of the same larger world. So when fans began connecting their names, it was easy to imagine that there must be a bigger story. But this is where we have to slow down. Publicly available information does not automatically prove that two people share a close friendship, secret partnership, or dramatic disagreement. Sometimes, two figures can work in the same industry for years without having the kind of relationship fans imagine. That doesn't make the story less interesting. In fact, it creates a different mystery. Because if there is a meaningful connection between Peter Klutt and Dennis Collins, what is actually documented? What do we know for certain? And perhaps more importantly, what has been exaggerated by the internet? The next part is where we separate the facts from the assumptions, and that may completely change how this story looks. Sometimes, the most important part of the story is knowing what not to claim. When famous people work in the same industry, fans naturally become curious. They see familiar names appear around the same events, businesses, cars, or television programs, and they begin to wonder if there's a deeper connection. But curiosity is not proof. And in the case of Peter Klutt and Dennis Collins, that distinction matters. Both men have built public careers around collector cars, but that does not automatically mean they have a close personal relationship or a hidden business partnership. Unless either man has clearly confirmed such a relationship through a reliable public statement, it would be unfair to present speculation as fact. What we can say is that their professional worlds have significant overlap. Both have spent years around rare and collectible automobiles. Both understand that the history behind a vehicle can dramatically affect its importance. and both became known to audiences who are fascinated by the stories behind old cars. But their public paths have not been identical. Peter Klutt became strongly associated with legendary Motorcar and the world of high-end collector vehicles. His career has included dealing with important automobiles and working within a market where provenance, restoration quality, originality, and condition can all affect value. Dennis Collins became better known for his work with Jeeps and classic vehicles, as well as his appearances in the television series Fast and Loud and his own automotive projects. His public image was built around finding, buying, restoring, and selling interesting vehicles. That difference is important. It means that while both men may understand the same broad industry, they have not necessarily approached it in the same way. And this may explain why fans remain fascinated by the idea of connection. The classic car community is smaller than many people realize. Collectors, dealers, restorers, auction houses, and television personalities often move through the same circles. A person can become familiar with another professional without that relationship ever becoming a major part of their public story. There is also another reason these connections attract attention. Cars create stories that can last for generations. A famous vehicle can pass from one owner to another. A restoration can bring together people from different parts of the industry. A rare discovery can suddenly connect two businesses that otherwise seem completely separate. So, even when there is no dramatic secret to uncover, the possibility of connection can still be fascinating. The real lesson may be that the classic car world is not made up of isolated names. It is a network of people whose paths can cross in unexpected ways. And that brings us to the bigger question. Why does a relationship between two car personalities matter so much to fans in the first place? The answer goes far beyond Peter Klutt and Dennis Collins. It reveals something about how the entire collector car business works, and why, in this world, reputation can sometimes be worth almost as much as the car sitting in front of you. There is a hidden side to the classic car world that many people never see. From the outside, it can look like a simple game of buying and selling expensive cars. Someone finds a rare Mustang, a valuable Corvette, or an old Jeep. The vehicle is restored, polished, photographed, and eventually sold. But behind that process is something much more complicated. Trust. A collector is not only buying a machine. They are buying a story. They are trusting the person selling the car. They are trusting the information about its history. They are trusting the restoration work. And sometimes, they are trusting that a vehicle really is as rare and original as someone claims. This is why people like Peter Klutt became important figures in the collector car world. Over many years, a reputation is built one deal at a time. A business can have a beautiful showroom, but that alone does not create trust. The real test comes when serious collectors start asking difficult questions. Where did the car come from? Who owned it? Has it been restored? What parts are original? Is the history documented? Those details can change everything. A car that looks ordinary at first may become extremely valuable when its past is discovered. On the other hand, a vehicle that looks perfect may lose some of its appeal if important parts of its history cannot be verified. This is where the world of Peter Klutt and Dennis Collins become interesting to compare. Both understood the power of a good automotive story, even if their public careers developed in different directions. For Collins, the excitement often came from the discovery, the old vehicle sitting somewhere unexpected, the forgotten Jeep, the possibility that something valuable was hiding in plain sight. For Klutt, the story often connected with the broader collector market. The importance of the vehicle itself, its history, its condition, and its place in automotive culture. Different roads. Similar destination. Both help show audiences an old car can have a second life, and that second life can sometimes be worth far more than anyone expected. But there is another side to this business. The more valuable classic cars become, the higher the stakes become. A mistake in a restoration can cost a fortune. A disagreement over a vehicle's history can damage reputations. And when television and social media enter the picture, every decision can become public. That is why the classic car world is about more than horsepower. It is about credibility. It is about relationships. And it is about knowing when a car is truly special. This may also explain why fans are so interested whenever two respected names, like Peter Klutt and Dennis Collins, are connected. People are not simply wondering about two celebrities. They are wondering about two different philosophies of the same passion. And there is still one question left. If Peter Klutt has ever offered a deeper perspective on Dennis Collins, what does that perspective actually tell us about the man behind the public image? The answer may not be a shocking secret or a dramatic confrontation. It may be something far more revealing. The biggest revelation in this story may be that there is no single dramatic moment that explains everything. There is no confirmed public evidence that Peter Klutt and Dennis Collins were involved in some secret partnership or major personal conflict. And without direct statements from the people involved, claims like that should not be treated as fact. But that does not mean their story has nothing to teach us. In fact, it may reveal something much more important. Peter Klutt and Dennis Collins represent two different ways of building a life around classic cars. Klutt's career shows the value of patience, knowledge, and long-term credibility. His work with collector automobiles reflects a world where details matter. The right history can make a car priceless. The right restoration can preserve a piece of the past. And the wrong decision can cost far more than money. Collins represents another side of the same passion. His story is connected with discovery. The excitement of finding something that others overlooked. The possibility that an old vehicle, sitting quietly for years, might still have a future. Neither approach is necessarily better. They simply tell different stories. And perhaps that is why people continue to be fascinated by both men. Classic cars have a strange power. They connect the past with the present. A machine built decades ago can still bring people together today. It can create friendships, businesses, arguments, investments, and memories. For someone watching from the outside, it is easy to focus on the price tag, but people who truly understand a hobby often see something else. They see history. They see craftsmanship. They see the chance to save something that might otherwise disappear forever. That is a deeper connection between the stories of Peter Klutt and Dennis Collins. Whether or not they have a close personal relationship, their careers exist within the same larger world. A world built by people who believe that old cars deserve another chance. And maybe that is the real reason the story continues to attract attention. Fans often want a secret. They want a hidden conversation, an unexpected partnership, or a shocking revelation. But sometimes the truth is quieter. Sometimes two people can travel different roads while sharing the same destination. Sometimes the real story is not about what happened between them. It is about what their careers tell us about the world they both chose. Peter Klutt's story reminds us that reputation takes years to build. Dennis Collins' journey reminds us that discovery can turn an ordinary-looking vehicle into something extraordinary. And together, their stories show why the classic car business continues to capture people's imagination. Because in the end, these cars are not just about the past. They are about what happens when someone decides the past is still worth saving. And perhaps that is the most important lesson of all. The next time you see an old car sitting forgotten in a garage, you might not see an abandoned machine. You might wonder about the story hiding inside it.